You know that specific kind of frustration? The one that comes when you're absolutely certain about something? Maybe it's how you learn or how you see the world. But the official rule book says you're wrong.
It's a very isolating feeling. It really is. The feeling of being an outlier.
Right. And it's not just that people disagree. It's that you have to spend all your energy just defending your own reality. You're constantly in this defensive crouch. And then, well, something happens.
The vindication.
The vindication, but not just any kind. It's when the validation comes from the most unexpected place. Not your friends agreeing with you.
No.
It's a stranger, maybe a scientist halfway across the world who's never met you, publishing a paper that basically says, oh yeah, that thing you do, that's actually how the brain is supposed to work.
That is exactly the energy of the piece we are unpacking today. We're looking at Gestalt Affirmed, Psycholinguistic Allies by Jaime Hoerricks, PhD.
Yeah.
And honestly, this is less a standard article and more of a map of a scientific shift.
It really feels like a turning point. Hoerricks is basically saying, okay, put down your shields, we don't have to fight anymore.
Right.
The cavalry has arrived. And they don't even know they're the cavalry.
That's the allies part of the title. So we are going to look at 3 specific research papers today from Italy, the Netherlands, and all the way to Kazakhstan that Hoerricks identifies as her accidental allies. And
accidental is the key word there, isn't it?
Oh, it's a crucial word. These researchers, they weren't trying to prove Hoerricks right. They weren't, trying to advocate for Gestalt language processing or neurodiversity. They were just doing mainstream science.
But their results just happened to dismantle the old myths.
Unintentionally, yeah.
I want to get into those myths because before we can appreciate the allies, we have to understand the enemy, so to speak. Hoerricks talks about writing in a defensive key. What exactly was she defending against?
She was fighting against something she calls epistemic gatekeeping.
Okay, that is a big phrase. Let's break that down.
Sure. So epistemic is about knowledge, how we know what we know. Gatekeeping is, well, keeping people out. So epistemic gatekeeping is when the establishment says your way of knowing isn't valid.
And in this context, the gatekeeper is the
linear myth.
The linear myth,
yeah.
Right? This is the idea that language is just a string of pearls, one word after another.
Precisely. It's the atomistic view. The assumption is that to understand a sentence, your brain acts like a computer reading code.
Right.
It identifies word A, defines it, identifies word B, defines it. Then it uses grammar rules to glue them together. It's all very bottom up.
And if you don't process that way, what if you process top down? You see the whole picture first.
Then, historically, you were viewed as having a deficit. If you experience meaning as a big, instantaneous whole, what we call a gestalt, you were often just told you were mistaken.
Or your processing was marginal.
Exactly. Hoerricks points out that for a long time, writing about this stuff meant you had to constantly prove it even existed.
Which just sounds exhausting.
It is exhausting. It's basically intellectual gaslighting. You're being told your primary cognitive experience is, imaginary.
But the tone of this new piece is totally different. She says we're moving from defense to affirmation.
Yeah.
She calls it the counterpoint chapter.
Which is such a beautiful musical metaphor. In a counterpoint, you have these independent melodies that when you play them together, they create a harmony.
Oh.
These new research papers are the independent melodies. They weren't written for Hoerricks, but they just happened to harmonize perfectly with her thesis.
So let's meet the first accidental ally. This takes us to a 2023 study. The authors are Bonetti, Ferrari, and Pavani.
And it's in a heavy-hitting journal, Frontiers in Human Neuroscience. So this is not a blog post.
Right. The paper is titled Multimodal Processing in Face-to-Face Interactions. Now, play devil's advocate for a second. We all know talking to someone's face is different from reading a book.
Yeah.
Why is this a breakthrough for Gestalt theory?
Because of how they describe the processing. The old linear model, it treats language as a modal, meaning the text of what I'm saying is the only thing that really matters to the brain.
So facial expressions, the tone, the gestures.
So just decorations, yeah.
So the old view is my brain processes hello. The same way whether I read it, hear it, or see you wave.
Roughly, yeah. But Bonetti and his colleagues argue that in natural face-to-face settings, the brain is doing something much more complex. It's multimodal. It is integrating visual data, auditory data, temporal data, all at the same time.
Okay.
But here's the kicker. They argue the brain uses this data to predict meaning before the sentence is even finished.
Wait, so it's not just reacting, it's predicting.
Exactly. Your brain is a prediction machine. It uses the whole seam, the field, to guess the gestalt of the message. If I frown and lean in, your brain is already priming for a serious message before I've barely opened my mouth.
So the context isn't extra. The context is the main data stream.
That's it. And this is a huge validation for people who are, context-dependent learners, the people who struggle to get instructions in a vacuum or hate reading dry text without examples.
I think that's a lot of us.
It is. This paper suggests that those people aren't slow or distracted. They're actually craving the high-bandwidth multimodal input the brain was evolved to use.
So linear text is actually the artificial stripped-down version.
Yes. That's a huge flip. It's like saying, you're not bad at eating, you're just starving because I'm only feeding you crumbs.
That's a great way to put it. The linear view feeds you crumbs, isolated words.
And the Gestalt view, supported by Benetti, says the brain wants the whole meal. It wants the entire sensory field.
Okay, so that's ally number one. The brain is a multimodal prediction machine. Now let's go to the second ally. This one feels a bit more direct.
Yeah, this is the paper by Buffert and Jacobs from 2021.
The title is A Gestalt Theory Approach to Structure and Language. I mean, they're not being subtle, are they?
Not at all. They put the G word right in the title. And this is significant because usually when psychologists talk about Gestalt, they're talking about vision.
Right, like seeing a bunny in the clouds or grouping dots into a circle. The whole is other than the sum of its parts.
And Buffert and Jacobs are asking a pretty radical question. Why do we treat language differently? Why do we assume language is linear when, everything else the brain does is based on pattern recognition?
So they're applying visual rules to sentences.
Essentially, yes. They argue that we perceive the structure of language in configurational wholes. When you hear a sentence, you aren't just hearing a list of words, you're hearing a shape, a structure.
Give me an example of a sentence shape.
Okay, think about a common phrase like, how are you doing? When you say that, do you really say every word? How are you doing?
No, it just comes out like one sound. How you doing?
Exactly. And your brain processes it as one unit. It's a chunk. In the linear view, that's just lazy speaking. But Buffert and Jacobs suggest this chunking is fundamental to how we recognize linguistic structure.
We hear the melody of the sentence.
The melody, the subject-verb-object pattern, we hear it as a single gestalt.
This connects so deeply to Gestalt language processing in kids, doesn't it? The kids who learn to speak in scripts.
It connects perfectly. For decades, if a child learned language by repeating whole phrases from movies, it was pathologized. It was called echolalia, something to be extinguished.
Stop repeating, use your own words, that kind of thing.
Right, because the assumption was it wasn't productive language, it was just mimicking. But this paper implies that those children are actually tapping into the structural gestalt of language first. They are learning the tune before they learn the individual notes.
I love that. It's like we've been yelling at kids for humming the melody instead of reading the sheet music.
And Buffert and Jacobs are basically saying the melody is the structure. So this linear way of teaching grammar diagramming sentences, it might actually be counterintuitive to how the brain naturally wants to work.
It validates learning top-down, learning the whole first and figuring out the parts later.
Which is how we learn almost everything else. You learn to ride a bike by getting on the whole bike, not by mastering the physics of the pedal first.
So true. Okay, so we have Benetti saying the context is a whole. Buffert and Jacobs saying the sentence structure is a whole. Now, Hoerricks takes us to the third ally.
Yes, this one is from the Bulletin of the Eurasian Humanities Institute in Kazakhstan.
The paper is titled Yay, which translates to Gestalt of the word.
And including this is brilliant because it shows this isn't just some Western European trend. This realization is popping up globally.
What's the specific argument here? Gestalt of the word sounds almost philosophical.
It is, but it has very practical implications. The authors argue against the dictionary definition view of words. In the linear model, a word is just a container for a specific limited definition.
Like apple, a round fruit, red or green.
Right. But the Kazakh researchers argue that meaning emerges as wholes, not fragments. They see a word as an ontology, a state of being.
Ontology. Okay, that's a heavy word. What does that actually mean for you listening?
It means that when you hear the word apple, your brain doesn't just pull up the dictionary text. It pulls up the crunch, the taste, the memory of picking apples, a pie your grandma made. The meaning is the entire experience associated with it.
It's the hologram, not the definition.
Exactly. And this is why the fragmented approach to teaching language like with drill and kill flashcards so often fails. It strips the word of its gestalt, its living reality. You can't teach a whole experience through fragments.
It really feels like all three of these papers are circling the same point. They're all shouting, stop breaking things, the value is in the whole.
They are all identifying what Hoerricks calls field-based meaning.
Let's unpack that term, field-based. She uses a metaphor about iron filings, right?
She does, and it's the perfect way to visualize this. Imagine you just dump a bunch of iron filings on a table. If you look at them one by one, they're just random, jagged little shards. That's the linear view. You're obsessed with the individual pieces. Now, put a magnet under the table. What happens? They align, they form a pattern. They create a shape that shows you the invisible forces at work.
The magnetic field.
Right. The Gestalt viewer is about perceiving the field. It's about understanding the invisible connections, the context, the emotion, the structure that holds all those pieces together.
And the linear view is what? Denying the magnet exists.
Basically. The linear view says there is no magnet, there are only filings. If you see a pattern, you're imagining it.
Wow. When you put it like that, it really does highlight how gaslighting the old model was. Stop looking at the invisible field, just look at the metal.
But you can't explain why the filings are moving if you ignore the field. And that is what these papers are finally admitting. Benetti is saying the field is the multimodal context. Bufford is saying the field is the sentence configuration.
And the Kazakh team is saying the field is the entire human experience of the word.
They are all proving the magnet is real. And for Hoerricks, and for anyone who thinks this way, that is the ultimate affirmation. It means you aren't crazy for seeing the connections first. You're just tuned into the field.
So we've moved from defense to affirmation. What does that change? I mean, practically speaking, what do we do differently tomorrow?
We stop trying to fix people who don't need fixing. I think that's the biggest change.
See more about that.
Well, in education, in speech therapy, even in corporate training, we spend so much time trying to force holistic thinkers to become linear thinkers.
We try to force them to focus on the iron filings and ignore the magnet.
Exactly. But if we accept that Gestalt processing is biologically valid, I mean, it's supported by frontiers in neuroscience and psychology, then we should be leaning into it. We should be teaching via context, using narratives, videos, big picture overviews.
I should respect that some people need the whole before they can handle the parts.
It changes the goal from remediation to translation. We don't need to cure how they think. We just need to help them translate their wholes into something other people can understand.
Which is so much healthier.
A much more productive approach. It's the difference between fighting your brain and actually using it.
I want to go back to that accidental part one last time, because there's something kind of funny about these serious scientists, probably in lab coats, worrying about grant funding, suddenly becoming heroes to a community they might not even know exists.
It is ironic, isn't it? And it really speaks to how siloed science can be. You can have psycholinguists in Italy discovering something that validates autistic self-advocates in the US, and they might never speak to each other.
And that's where people like Hoerricks come in, the connectors.
Yes, Hoerricks is doing the synthesis. She's the one looking at the board and connecting the red string between all the different pins. She saw the pattern that the individual researchers might have missed.
She saw the gestalt of the research.
Exactly. She applied Gestalt thinking to the study of Gestalt thinking.
Very meta. But it brings up a provocative thought. We've been talking about how this linear myth is crumbling. And it's crumbling because the data is finally catching up to intuition.
Right.
So here's my question for you, and for you listening. If this massive assumption about language, that it's linear and atomistic, is turning out to be wrong, what else is wrong?
That's the scary and exciting question.
I mean, think about it. What other truths about how our brains work are currently shaking in their boots? What other accidental allies are out there publishing right now?
It's almost a certainty that they're out there. There's probably a paper published last week in a journal about, marine biology or AI that holds the key to understanding another aspect of how we think.
We just haven't found it yet. We're not looking for it.
Or looking for it with the wrong keywords. We're searching for filings when we should be searching for magnets.
I love that. It really reframes the experience of being an outlier. If you feel like you see the world differently, don't just assume you're broken.
No. Assume the science just hasn't been published yet. Or maybe it hasn't been translated yet.
The allies are out there. You just have to find them.
And thanks to work like this, that's getting a little bit easier.
This has been a fascinating dive. We've gone from the frustration of gatekeeping to the vindication of neuroscience and psychology. It's a good day for the big-picture thinkers.
It is indeed.
Thanks for listening. Keep looking for those magnets. We'll see you in the next deep dive.